Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Jacob and Jacob podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Roba. I'm joined by my co-host, Jacob Hare, and today we're very lucky to be joined by NHL announcer for NHL and NBC, John Forslund. John, thank you for being here.
Hi guys, my pleasure. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Hockey coming back in a week, so getting excited.
That's good news.
So let's get right into it. Tell us why you wanted to be an announcer.
That's a good question. I think I'm not any different than most that went into this. You know, when you're younger, something happens. I don't know, and I think it's the same for a lot of people. No matter what you do with your life, there's a chord that strikes, and you understand that, hey, I'm interested in doing that. And then it starts to occupy your time as a young person. It did for me when I was around 10 years old. It became a hobby, announcing games off the television, into a tape recorder. Was a big sports fan, obviously, played sports. You could connect the dots similarly with a lot of people. But I think what ends up happening is, it was the craft or the cadence of calling a hockey game that really captivated my interest, and that's what I really wanted to do. So I'm very fortunate that it worked out the way it did, because I kind of had this thing laser focused at a young age, with people telling me, "No, that's interesting, but good luck with that." You know what I mean? So I'm very fortunate that it worked out the way it did.
You said that you were a big sports fan growing up. Did you ever want to be an announcer for any other sports?
Yeah, I think I did, but I think the one moment in time that I recall when I was around 8 years old was when Bobby Orr scored the Stanley Cup goal for the Boston Bruins. And it was not only that moment. I grew up about 90 miles west of Boston, but it wasn't only that moment. It was Dan Kelly's call on CBS of the game and how it sounded to me. I thought it was really cool. So I always loved hockey cadence, hockey play-by-play. I have done college basketball. I have done some football, but I had to make a choice, early in my broadcasting career, of where my focus was and what I wanted to do with my life. And I absolutely have loved hockey from a young age, and I think that's why I did it.
Did you play hockey as a kid?
Yeah, but the interesting thing about this is I was probably a better baseball player. It took me all the way through high school and into college. And the thing about hockey was I was never really exposed to it at a young age to start. So I wanted to. We didn't have the means. And my dad was, ironically, a pretty good skater, but they had me later in life. So and hockey wasn't that popular in the early 70s. It was when the Bruins started to win, the rinks went up in Massachusetts. And so then my point is, I was already a preteen. And by the time I started to play, I was behind the curve with a lot of these kids and was more proficient at other sports. So athletically, I went the other way. My fandom was hockey. And maybe that's why I do what I do, because I was more of a hockey fan I was a baseball fan, but I played a lot of baseball. So it was like, if you can understand what I'm saying, I had a different point of view. My dad and I went to games together. It was our thing, minor league games in Springfield. That was where I read a lot about hockey, because my mom told me you don't read enough. So read what you like to read. So I read books about the game, the history of hockey, and I could recall a lot of it. And I think that played into my skill set as an announcer. You have to have recall, you have to have some memorization, you have to have all these things. And so that's where the hockey niche was for me.
Do you have a favorite hockey book today?
Any book written by Stan Fischler, I enjoyed, because he was an unbelievable historian. Maybe you guys are familiar with him, maybe you're not, but he wrote all the books back in the day when we didn't have a lot of, obviously we had none of this stuff. We had no internet. We didn't have a lot of cable television. We didn't have a lot of ways to learn anything except going to a library, going to the sports section. And if you lived in the Northeast, you might be able to find 2 or 3 books about the sport of hockey. And most of them were written by this guy named Stan Fischler. I had no idea who he was. His wife worked with him. He did the articles in Sports Illustrated for hockey that were always in the back of the magazine. And then as I got older, I mean, the Bible became the hockey news for me, right? So all of that stuff was great. But I can't pinpoint a book because a lot of them are autobiographical. I can't pick a book out. I've read a ton about it, but historically, Stan was the link to the old stuff that you needed to learn, and it helped me when I became professional at this in the early 80s.
So your two famous catchphrases, hey, what do you say? And that's hockey, baby. Where did those start? How did you come up with those?
That's hockey, baby was random. And so I started using it, I don't know, 12 years ago, maybe something like that. That was a random one that I just, and with catchphrases, I think some can be scripted and you can think about them beforehand, and I'll get into that one. And some of them just come out spontaneously. And usually when the spontaneous ones come out, they're organic, it's kind of neat. And that's what happened with That's Hockey. Now, which isn't very original. I mean, it's been used by advertising their agencies. There's a show in Canada called That's Hockey on TSN. There's nothing original about it, but the originality in the call is something that just came out one night and I continue to use it. Now, hey, what do you say is attributed to my late father. And my dad died. He was my best friend. My dad died in 1985 at the age of 59, suddenly in the middle of the night. And I was 22 at the time, and I just started my job with the Springfield Indians in the American Hockey League. I was an intern, and then they hired me, and I had my first paycheck the night before he passed away. He passed away early in the morning. And I was still living at home, so I was there for all that, and it was pretty tragic. But the thing is, he used to say that phrase, coaching us as kids in baseball, you know, hey, what do you say? He'd say that if he met you guys in public. That was his deal. I didn't hear it from many people. So as I did my games in Springfield and had a lot of lonely hours on the bus, I was thinking about a way to pay tribute to him. And I thought, you know, tonight when a goal scored, I'm going to use this phrase. And I did. And then as that morphed a little bit down the road, I decided to use it on goals that I feel the game is put away. So if I think the game is over obviously in overtime it's over, but I've used it earlier in games, that's when I use it. But it's strictly a tribute to my father. So it's personal. And early in my career, people would me over that. These critics that wrote about media and broadcasting back when I first started were kind of cruel. They thought it was a trite thing and kind of stupid and blah, blah, blah. And maybe some people still do, but I don't care because it's between me and my dad. And but I use it now, and now people know me by it. It's gotten some run. So I'm enjoying it.
That's awesome.
So you were presented with a unique opportunity this summer to announce in the bubble. Can you tell us what that experience was like?
It was one of the greatest experiences in my career. It was lonely at times. It was redundant. But that was a little bit of the issue. Most of it was just great because we were bringing the back. It was historic. Yeah. I hope the games were exciting to watch. I really didn't know what this was going to be like without fans. And as I watched the games back, and I usually watch my work back as much as possible, it was the presentation of the game and the way the league kind of, made the arenas look with the lighting and everything. It was kind of cool. So I thought it was a great experience, and we needed to do it for fans to see the game again. We needed to do it for financial reasons for the league. And personally, it felt good to get out of the house. And even if I was quarantined again, and I've spent in the beginning of this situation from the beginning of March until now, I've had 19 days in total quarantine. So I'm an expert on that. But it was all worth it. It was all worth the opportunity to go there and be in Toronto and Edmonton and be there until the end.
What was a normal day look like in the bubble?
It was Groundhog Day, right? It was get up in the morning, do my normal prep before a game. Sometimes I was doing 3 games in one day. Wow. So it was all prep, work, eat, go to sleep, and exercise a little bit to keep yourself sane. That's all we could do. And that's all I did day after day after day. And then as we got deeper in the playoffs, you would have a couple of more off days, which were horrible because there's absolutely nothing to do but be in your hotel room because there was less teams, right? So there were off days, and then we got to the final where 2 teams are left. But, it was, again, it was all worth it because I love what I do. and I love the game. So you put those two things together and you could get through it. But I was 70 days. I was 70 days tested every day in that bubble. And it was restrictive. It really was.
Had you ever called multiple games in a day prior to the bubble, or was it fun?
Not the NHL level. No, never. It's, I'm not going to try and come out like a hero on this, but it is a lot. It is a lot. I was worried about my voice. Luckily drank a ton of water and tried to stay healthy and got through that because I was worried, and in the playoffs, you never know how long the game's going to be. As we saw, luckily I was sitting there in the next booth waiting for my turn as Gord Miller called the 5 overtime game. And then I was told to go home because our game wasn't going to happen until the next day. And that doubled me up the next day. So I already had a game scheduled for the next day, but that Carolina-Boston game got added on the next day. So it was a reach. And the preparation is the hardest part. There's 3 to 4 hours of prep for each game in my system, the way I do it. So do the math. There's only so many hours in a day, right? So that's kind of what it was like.
So, why with you returning to Carolina this season, what are some of your most fond memories from being the Hurricanes announcer?
Everything about it. I still kind of miff that I'm not going to be there. It's unusual now that they've started to practice and I'm not at the practices. But from the day we got here, of course, I love my time with the Whalers. So I started with the Whalers in 91, enjoyed that. But everything we did here, the Stanley Cup in 06, the draft was in 04 is a great moment. I was involved in that. The All-Star game was here in 2011, and I was on the ice hosting the skills competition, in front of a packed house. That was absolutely amazing. Every playoff game was special for the Hurricanes here over those years. And all the community work. I'm going to miss that the most, connecting with fans. I really enjoy that. So stuff that nobody ever sees. Youth hockey events, casino nights, charity events, hospital visits, all these things you do, speeches, these things you do, you go out and talk to people about the game, help grow the game. If I get a chance to do that again, that's going to be great.
All right. So one last question before we let you go. Right now, very, very, very early Stanley Cup prediction.
The two teams or the one team?
The two teams.
Two teams. And then you can give us the one from those.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take Colorado in whatever we're calling it, because I'm not sure. There's a East and a West. It's 1-4 when we get to the Final Four. And in the East, I'm gonna lean on Tampa Bay again. I think right now they're positioned to do it again. They get Kucherov back in a long while. He's going to be out for a while, but they get him back. I think they have the guns. But I'm not 100% sure it's going to be that easy to roll it back again. So I really like Colorado. I think if they can, they had so many injuries in the bubble, but that team, and I think Nathan McKinnon's the best player right now. I really do. I think he's right there with McDavid, and boy, I had him for the MVP. I think he carries that team. But anyway, I really think they have a great team with some of the additions they made. They're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, it's funny. We were doing a podcast before the bubble, and we were debating McDavid or McKinnon for the best player in the league.
Yeah, what do you guys think? I like McKinnon.
Yeah,
I'm a big McKinnon fan. I think they're skating, those two. I think it's above the rest. I think their skating really sets the two of them apart.
Yeah, and the thing about McKinnon is, I don't know what it is. I don't know. One thing I got to see with McDavid, he's the most talented player in the league, but there's another notch for him to carry his team, right? And I just see him. The Draisaitl's there too, right? So that's, they're good players in Colorado, but not as good as McKinnon. Draisaitl is very close to McDavid. McDavid's faster, but they're elite and big time with a capital E. McKinnon has this competitiveness shift after shift. I don't see it yet with McDavid. It comes and goes. He mopes a little bit for me. His team's, he's not taking his team to another place on his own accord. They always seem to, they lean on that excuse there. So he's a great player, and his day will come. I think it's like Crosby. There's a maturation process. Ovechkin, maturation process. It's sometimes quicker than others, and McKinnon's a little bit older than McDavid, so we'll see.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see this season play out. But John, once again, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, guys. Stay well. Good job here, and good luck to you guys as you move on in life. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.